Hey guys, it's Cassidy again, and today we're going to read the next part of The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. There it goes. Alright. Chapter 66 811. I slept in Libby's room again that night. She didn't. I asked Orrin to confirm with her security team that she was okay and on the premises. She was, but he didn't tell me where. No Libby, no Max. I was alone. More alone than I'd been since I got here. No Jameson. I hadn't seen him since he'd left that morning. No Grayson. He hadn't lingered with me for long after we discovered the clue. 118. That was all I had to concentrate on. 3 numbers, which confirmed for me that Toby's tree in the Blackwood had been just a tree. If there was a 4th number, it was still out there. Based on the keychain, the clue in the Blackwood could appear in any format, not just a carving. Late into the night, and nearly asleep, I heard something like footsteps. Behind me, below, the wind whistled outside my window. Gunshots lurked in my memory. I had no idea what was lurking in the halls. I didn't fall asleep until dawn. When I did, I dreamed about sleeping. I have a secret, my mom says, cheerfully bouncing onto my bed, drawing me awake. Care to make a guess, my newly 15-year-old daughter? I'm not playing, I grumble, pulling the covers back over my head. I'll never guess right. I'll give you a hint, my mom wheedles. For your birthday. She pulls the covers back and flops down beside me on my pillow. Her smile is contagious. I finally break and smile back. Fine, give me a hint. I have a secret about the day you were born. I woke with a headache to my lawyer throwing open the plantation shutters. Rise and shine, Elisa said, with the force and surety of the person making an argument in court. Go away. Channeling my younger self, I pulled the covers over my head. Sorry. My apologies, Elisa said, not sounding apologetic in the least. But you really do have to get up now. I don't have to do anything, I muttered. I'm a billionaire. That worked about as well as I'd expected it to. If you'll recall, Elisa said pleasantly, in an attempt to do damage control after your press conference earlier this week, I arranged for your debut in Texas Society to take place this weekend. There's a charity benefit that you'll be attending this evening. I barely slept last night. I tried for pity. Someone tried to shoot me. We'll get you some vitamin C and a pain pill. Elisa was without mercy. I'm taking you dress shopping in half an hour. You have media training at 1, hair and makeup at 4. Maybe we should reschedule, I say, due to someone wanting to kill me. Orrin signed us off on leaving the estate. Elisa gave me a look. You have 29 minutes. She eyed my hair. Make sure you're looking your best. I'll meet you at the car. Chapter 67. Orrin escorted me to the SUV. Lisa and 2 of his men were waiting outside of it, and they weren't the only ones. I know you weren't planning on going shopping without me, Thea said by way of greeting. Where there are high-fashion boutiques, so there is Thea. I looked toward Orrin, hoping he'd kick her out of the car. He didn't. Besides, Thea told me in a haughty whisper as she buckled her seatbelt, we need to talk about Rebecca. The SUV had 3 rows of seats. Orrin and a second bodyguard sat in the front. Elisa and the third sat in the back. Thea and I were in the middle. What did you do to Rebecca? Thea waited until she was satisfied that the other occupants of the car weren't listening before she asked the question, moaned under her breath. I didn't do anything to Rebecca. I will accept that you didn't fall into the James and Hawthorne trap for the purpose of dredging up memories of Jameson and Emily. Thea clearly thought she was being magnanimous. But that's where my generosity ends. Rebecca's painfully beautiful, but she cries ugly. I know what she looks like when she's spent all night crying. Whatever her deal is, this isn't just about Jameson. What happened at the cottage? Rebecca knows about the shooting. She was forbidden from telling anyone. I try to wrap my mind around the implications. Why was she crying? Speaking of Jameson, Thea changed tactics. He is oh so clearly miserable, and I can only assume that I owe that to you. He's miserable? I felt something flicker in my chest. A what if, but I quelled it. Why do you hate him so much? I asked Thea. Why don't you? Why are you even here? I narrowed my eyes. Not in this car, I amended, before she could mention high-fashion boutiques. At Hawthorne House. What did Zara and your uncle ask you to come here to do? Why stick so close to me? What did they want? What makes you think they asked me to do anything? It was obvious in Thea's tone and in her manner that she was a person who had been born with the upper hand and never lost it. There's a first time for everything, I thought, but before I could lay out my case, the car pulled up to the boutique, and the paparazzi circled us in a deafening, claustrophobic crunch. I slumped back in my seat. I have an entire mall in my closet. I shot Elisa an aggravated look. If I just wore something I already have, we wouldn't have to deal with this. This, Elisa echoed as Orrin got out of the car and the roar of the reporter's questions grew louder, is the point. I was here to be seen, to control the narrative. Smile pretty, Thea murmured directly into my ear. The boutique Elisa had chosen for this carefully choreographed outing was the kind of store that only had one copy of each dress. They'd closed the entire shop for me. Green. Thea pulled an evening gown from the rack. Emerald to match your eyes. My eyes are hazel, I said flatly. I turned from the dress she was holding to the sales attendant. Do you have anything less low cut? You prefer higher cuts? The sales attendant's tone was so carefully non-judgmental that I was almost certain she was judging me. Something that covers my collarbone, I said, and then I shot a look at Elisa. And my stitches. You heard Miss Grams, Elisa said firmly, and Thea's right. Bring us something green. Chapter 68. We found a dress. The paparazzi snapped their pictures as Orrin ushered the lot of us into the SUV. As we pulled back from the curb, he glanced in the rear view mirror. Seatbelts buckled? Mine was. Beside me, Thea fastened hers. Have you thought about hair and makeup? She asked. Constantly, I replied in a deadpan. These days, I think of literally nothing else. A girl has to have her priorities in order. Thea smiled. And here I was thinking your priorities all had the last name Hawthorne. That's not true, I said. But isn't it? How much time had I spent thinking about them? How badly had I wanted Jameson to mean it when he told me I was special? How clearly could I still feel Grayson checking my wound? Your bodyguard didn't want me to come today, Thea murmured as we turned into a long and winding road. Neither did your lawyer. I persevered, and do you know why? Not a clue. This has nothing to do with my uncle or Zara. Thea played with the tips of her dark hair. I'm just doing what Emily would want me to do. Remember that, would you? Without warning, the car swerved. My body kicked into panic mode, fight or flight, and neither one of them was an option, strapped into the back seat. I whipped my head toward Orrin, who was driving, and noticed that the guard in the passenger seat had his hand on his gun, vigilant, ready. Something's wrong. We shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have trusted, even for a moment, that I was safe. Elisa pushed this. She wanted me out here. Hold tight, Orrin yelled. What's going on? I asked. The words lodged themselves in my throat and came out as a whisper. I saw a flash of movement on my window. A car jerking toward us, high speed. I screamed. My subconscious was screaming at me to run. Orrin swerved again, enough to prevent full-scale impact, but I heard the screech of metal on metal. Someone is trying to run us off the road. Orrin laid on the gas. The sound of sirens, police sirens, barely broke through the cacophony of panic in my head. This can't be happening. Please don't let this be happening. Please, no. Orrin roared into the left lane, ahead of the car that attacked us. He swung the SUV around, up and over the median, sending us racing in the opposite direction. I tried to scream, but it wasn't loud or shrill. I was keening, and I couldn't make it stop. There was more than one siren now. I turned toward the back of the car, expecting the worst, preparing for impact, and I saw the car that had hit us spinning out. Within seconds, the vehicle was surrounded by cops. We're okay, I whispered. I didn't believe it. My body was still telling me that I would never be okay again. Orrin eased off the gas, but he didn't stop, and he didn't turn around. What the hell was that? I asked, my voice high enough in pitch and volume to crack glass. That, Orrin replied calmly, was someone taking the bait. The bait? I swung my gaze toward Elisa. What is he talking about? In the heat of the moment, I thought that it was Elisa's fault that we were here. I doubted her, but Orrin's response suggested that maybe I should have blamed them both. This, Elisa said, her trademark calm dented but not destroyed, was the point. That was the same thing she'd said when she'd seen the paparazzi outside the boutique. The paparazzi, making sure we were seen. the absolute need to come dress shopping, despite everything that had happened. Because of everything that had happened. You used me as bait? I wasn't a yeller, but I was yelling now. Beside me, Thea recovered her voice, and then some. What the hell is going on here? Warren exited the highway and slowed to a stop at a red light. Yes, he told me apologetically. We used you and ourselves as bait. He glanced toward Thea and answered her question. There was an attack on Avery 2 days ago. Our friends at the police station agreed to play this my way. Your way could have killed us. I couldn't make my heart stop pounding. I could barely breathe. We had backup, Warren assured me. My people as well as the police. I won't tell you that you weren't in danger. But the situation being what it was, danger wasn't a possibility that could be eliminated. There were no good options. You had to continue living in that house. Instead of waiting for another attack, Elisa and I engineered what looked like a prime opportunity. Now, maybe we can get answers. First, they told me that the Hawthorns weren't a threat. Then they'd used me to flesh out the threat. You could have told me, I said roughly. It was better, Lisa told me, that you didn't know, that no one knew. Better for whom? Before I could say that, Orrin got a call. Did Rebecca know about the attack? Thea asked beside me. Is that why she's been so upset? Orrin, Elisa ignored Thea and me. Did they apprehend the driver? They did. Orrin paused, and I caught him looking at me in the rear-view mirror, his eyes softening in a way that made my stomach twist. Avery, it was your sister's ex-boyfriend. It was your sister's boyfriend. Drake. Ex-boyfriend, I corrected, my voice getting caught in my throat. Orrin didn't respond to my assertion. They found a rifle in his trunk that, at least preliminarily, matches the bullets. The police will be wanting to talk to your sister. What? I said, my heart still banging mercilessly at my ribcage. Why? On some level, I knew. I knew the answer to that question, but I couldn't accept it. I wouldn't. If Drake was the shooter, someone would have had to sneak him onto the estate, Elisa said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. Not Libby, I thought. Libby wouldn't. Avery. Elisa put a hand on my shoulder. If something happens to you, even without a will, your sister and your father are your heirs. Chapter 69. These were the facts. Drake had tried to run my car off the road. He had a weapon that was likely a match for the bullets Orrin had recovered. He had a felony record. The police took my statement. They asked questions about the shooting, about Drake, about Libby. Eventually, I was escorted back to Hawthorne House. The front door flew open before Elisa and I had even made it to the porch. Nash stormed out of the house, then slowed when he saw us. You want to tell me why I'm just now getting word that the police hauled Libby out of here? He asked Elisa. I'd never heard a southern drawl sound quite like that. Elisa lifted her chin. If she's not under arrest, she had no obligation to go with them. She doesn't know that, Nash boomed. Then he lowered his voice and looked her in the eye. If you'd wanted to protect her, you could have. There were so many layers to that sentence, I couldn't begin to untangle them, not with my brain focused on other things. Libby. The police have Libby. I'm not in the business of protecting every sad story that comes along, Elisa told Nash. I knew she wasn't just talking about Libby, but that didn't matter. She's not a sad story, I gritted out. She's my sister. And, more likely than not, an accessory to attempted murder. Elisa reached out to touch my shoulder. I stepped back. Libby wouldn't hurt me. She wouldn't let anyone hurt me. I believed that, but I couldn't say it. Why couldn't I say it? That bastard's been texting her, Nash said beside me. I've been trying to get her to block him, but she feels so damn guilty. For what? Elisa pushed. What does she feel guilty for? If she's got nothing to hide from the police, then why are you so concerned about her talking to them? Nash's eyes flashed. You're really gonna stand here and act like we weren't both raised to never talk to the authorities without a lawyer present, like a commandment? I thought about Libby alone in a cell. She probably wasn't even in a cell, but I couldn't shake the image. Send someone, I told Elisa shakily, from the firm. She opened her mouth to object, and I cut her off. Do it. I might not hold the purse strings now, but I would someday. She worked for me. Consider it done, Elisa said. And leave me alone, I told her fiercely. She and Orrin had kept me in the dark. They'd moved me around like a chess piece on a board. All of you, I said, turning back toward Orrin. I needed to be alone. I needed to do everything in my power to keep them from planting even a seed of doubt, because if I couldn't trust Libby, I had no one. Nash cleared his throat. You want to tell her about the media consultant waiting in the sitting room, Lily, or should I? Chapter 70. I agreed to sit down with Elisa's high-priced media consultant, not because I had any intention of going through with tonight's charity gala, but because it was the only way I knew of to make sure that everyone else left me alone. There are 3 things we're going to work on today, Avery. The consultant, an elegant black woman with a posh British accent, had introduced herself as Landon. I had no idea if that was her first name or her last. After the attack this morning, there will be more interest in your story and your sisters than ever. Libby wouldn't hurt me, I thought desperately. She wouldn't let Drake hurt me. And then she didn't block his number. The 3 things we'll be practicing today are what to say, how to say it, and how to identify things that you shouldn't say. Landon was poised, precise, and more stylish than either of my stylists. Now, obviously, there's going to be some interest in the unfortunate incident that took place this morning, but your legal team would prefer you to say as little on that front as possible. That front being the second attempt on my life in 3 days. Libby isn't involved. She can't be. Repeat after me, Landon instructed. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. I blocked out the thoughts dodging me, as much as I could. I'm grateful to be alive, I repeated stonily, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. Landon gave me a look. How do you think you sound? Pissed? I guessed dourly. Landon offered me a gentle suggestion. Perhaps try sounding less pissed. She waited a moment, then assessed the way I was sitting. Open up your shoulders, loosen those muscles. Your posture is the first thing that the audience's brain is going to latch onto. If you look like you're trying to fold in on yourself, and if you make yourself small, that sends a message. With a roll of my eyes, I tried to sit up a little straighter and let my hands fall to my sides. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. No, Elisa gave a shake of her head. You want to sound like a real person. I am a real person. Not to the rest of the world. Not yet. Right now you're a spectacle. There was nothing unkind in Landon's tone. Pretend you're back home. You're in your comfort zone. What was my comfort zone? Talking to Max, who was MIA for the foreseeable future? Crawling into bed with Libby? Think of someone you trust. That hurt in a way that should have hollowed me out, but left me feeling like I might throw up instead. I swallowed. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. It seems forced, Avery. I ground my teeth. It is forced. Does it have to be? Landon let me marinate in that question for a moment. Is no part of you grateful to have been given this opportunity, to live in this house, to know that no matter what happens, you and the people you love will always be taken care of? Money was security. It was safety. It was knowing you could screw up without screwing your life. If Libby did let Drake onto the estate, if he's the one who shot me, she couldn't have known that's what was going to happen. Aren't you grateful to be alive after everything that's happened? Did you want to die today? No, I wanted to live, really live. I'm grateful to be here, I said, feeling the words a little more this time. And I'm grateful to be alive. Better, but this time, let it hurt. Excuse me? Show them that you're vulnerable. I wrinkled my nose at her. Show them that you're just an ordinary girl, just like them. That's the trick of the trade. How real, how vulnerable can you seem without letting yourself actually be vulnerable at all? Vulnerable wasn't the story I'd chosen to tell when they'd been designing my wardrobe. I was supposed to have an edge. But sharp-edged girls had feelings too. I'm grateful to be alive, I said, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. Good, Landon gave me a little nod. Now we're going to play a little game. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to do the one thing you absolutely must master before I let you out of here to go to the gala tonight. What is that? I asked. You're not going to answer the questions. Landon's expression was intent. Not with words, not with your face, not at all. Until you get a question that you can, in some way, answer with the key message you've already practiced. Gratitude, I said, etc., etc. I shrugged. Doesn't sound hard. Avery, is it true that your mother had a long-standing sexual relationship with Tobias Hawthorne? She almost got me. I almost spat out the word no, but somehow I refrained. Did you stage today's attack? What? Watch your face, she told me, and then without losing a beat. How's your relationship with the Hawthorne family? I sat passive, not allowing myself to so much as think of their names. What are you going to do with the money? How do you respond to the people calling you a con woman and a thief? Were you injured today? That last question gave me an opening. I'm fine, I said. I'm grateful to be alive, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. I expected accolades, but got none. Is it true that your sister is in a relationship with the man who tried to kill you? Is she involved in the attempt on your life? I wasn't sure if it was the way she'd snuck the questions in, right after my previous answer, or how close to the quick the question cut, but I snapped. No. The words burst from my mouth. My sister had nothing to do with this. Landon gave me a look. From the top, she said steadily. Let's try again. Chapter 71. After my session with Landon, she dropped me off in my bedroom, where the style team awaited. I could have told him I wasn't going to the gala, but Landon had gotten me thinking, what kind of message would that send? That I was afraid? That I was hiding away, or hiding something? That Libby was guilty? She's not. That's what I kept telling myself, over and over again. I was halfway through hair and makeup when Libby let herself into my bedroom. My stomach muscles clenched, my heart jumping into my throat. Her face was streaked with running makeup. She'd been crying. She didn't do anything wrong. She didn't. Libby hesitated for 3 or 4 seconds, then threw herself at me, catching me up in the biggest, tightest hug of my life. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I had a moment, exactly one, where my blood ran cold. I should have blocked him, Libby continued, but for what it's worth, I just put my phone in the blender, and then I turned the blender on. She wasn't apologizing for aiding and abetting Drake. She was apologizing for not blocking his number, for fighting with me when I'd wanted her to. I bowed my head, and a set of hands immediately lifted my chin back up as the stylists continued their work. Say something, Libby told me. I wanted to tell her that I believed her, but even saying the words felt disloyal, like an acknowledgement that I really hadn't been sure about until now. You're gonna need a new phone, I said. Libby gave a strangled little laugh. We're also going to need a new blender. She wiped the heel of her right hand across her eyes. No tears, the man making me up barked. You want to look like the picture we were given, correct? The man asked me, aggressively working some mousse through my hair. Sure, I replied. Whatever. If Lisa had given them a picture, that was one less decision for me to make, one less thing to think about. Like the current billion-dollar question. If Drake had shot me and Libby hadn't let him onto the estate, who had? An hour later, I stood facing the mirror. The stylist had braided my hair, but it wasn't just a braid. They'd divided my hair in half, and then each half into thirds. Each third had been bisected, and one half was wound around the other, giving the hair a spiraling, rope-like look. Tiny, transparent hair ties and an ungodly amount of hairspray had held that in place as they'd begun to fringe braid my hair on each side. I had no idea exactly what happened next, other than the fact that it hurt like hell and required all 4 of my stylist's hands, plus one of Libby's, but the final braid wrapped around my head to frame one side of my face. The coils were multicolored, showing off my lowlights and the natural blonde streaks in my ashy brown hair. The effect was hypnotizing, like nothing I'd ever seen. The makeup was less dramatic. Natural, fresh, understated everywhere but the eyes. I had no idea what witchcraft they'd evoked. But my charcoal-lined eyes looked twice their normal size, and green, a true green, with flecks that looked more gold than brown. One of the stylists slipped a necklace around my neck. White gold and 3 emeralds. The jewels were the size of my thumbnail. You look beautiful, Libby told me. I looked nothing like myself. I looked like someone who belonged at a ball, and still I almost backed out of going to the gala. The one thing that kept me from throwing in the towel was Libby. If there was ever a time for me to control the narrative, it was now. Chapter 72. Orrin met me at the top of the stairs. Have the police gotten anything out of Drake? I asked. Has he admitted to a shooting? Who's he working with? Deep breath, Orrin told me. Drake has more than implicated himself, but he's trying to paint Libby as the mastermind. The story doesn't add up. There is no security footage of him entering the estate, and if there would be, as he claims, Libby had let him through the gate. Oh, and there would be if, as he claims, Libby had let him through the gate. Our best guess at the moment is that he came in through the tunnels. The tunnels? I repeated. They're like the secret passages in the house, except they run under the estate. I know of 2 entrances, and they're both secure. I heard what Oren left unsaid. There are 2 that you know of, but this is Hawthorne House. There could be more. On my way to a ball, I should have felt like a fairy tale princess, but my horse-drawn carriage was an SUV identical to the one that Drake had sideswiped this morning. Nothing said fairy tale like an attempted assassination. Who knows the location of the tunnels? That was the question of the hour. If there are tunnels that Hawthorne House's head of security didn't even know about, I seriously doubted that Drake had come across them on his own. Libby wouldn't have known about them either. So who? Someone very, very familiar with Hawthorne House. Did they reach out to Drake? Why? That last question was less of a mystery. After all, why commit murder yourself when there is someone else out there willing and ready to do it for you? All someone would have had to know was that Drake existed, that he had already gotten violence once, and that he had every reason to hate me. Within the halls of Hawthorne House, none of that was a secret. Maybe his accomplice had sweetened the pie by telling him that if anything happened to me, Libby stood to inherit. They let a felon do the dirty work and take the fall. I sat in my bulletproof SUV in a $5,000 dress and a necklace that probably could have paid for at least a year of college, wondering if Drake's capture meant that the danger was over, or if whoever had given him tunnel access had other plans for me. The Foundation purchased 2 tables for tonight's event, Elisa told me from the front seat. Zara was loath to part with any seats, but since it's technically your foundation, she didn't have much of a choice. Lisa was acting like nothing had happened, like I had every reason to trust her, when it felt like reasons not to were stacking up. So I'll be sitting with them, I said without expression, the Hawthorns. One of whom, at least one of whom, might still want me dead. It's to your advantage if everything appears friendly between you. Elisa had to realize how ridiculous that sounded, given the context. If the Hawthorne family accepts you, that will go a long way towards squelching some of the less seemly theories as to why you inherited. And what about the unseemly theories that one of them, at least one, wants me dead? I asked. Maybe it was Zara, or her husband, or Sky, or even Nan, who'd more or less told me that she'd killed her husband. We're still on high alert, Oren told me, but it would be to our benefit if the Hawthorns didn't realize that. If the conspirators' hope was to pin things on Drake and Libby, let them think they've succeeded. Last time around, I'd blown the element of surprise. This time, things would be different. Chapter 73. Avery, look over here. Any comment about the arrest of Drake Sanders? Can you comment on the future of the Hawthorne Foundation? Is it true that your mother was once arrested for solicitation? If it hadn't been for the 7 rounds of practice questions I'd been put through earlier, that last one would have gotten me. I would have answered, and my answer would have contained expletives, plural. Instead, I stood near the car and waited. And then the question I've been waiting for came. With everything that's happened, how do you feel? I looked directly at the reporter who asked that question. I'm grateful to be alive, I said, and I'm grateful to be here tonight. The event was held in an art museum. We entered on the upper floor and descended a massive marble staircase into the exhibit hall. By the time I was halfway down, everyone in the room was either staring at me or not staring in a way that was worse. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw Grayson. He wore a tuxedo exactly the way he wore a suit. He was holding a glass, clear with a clear liquid inside. The moment he saw me, he froze in place, as suddenly and fully as if someone had stopped time. I thought back to standing with him at the bottom of the hidden staircase, to the way he looked at me, and on some level I thought that was the way he was looking at me now. I thought I had taken his breath away. Then he dropped the glass in his hand. It hit the floor and shattered, shards of crystal spraying everywhere. What happened? What did I do? Elisa nudged me to keep moving. I finished descending the stairs as the waitstaff hurried over to clean up the glass. Grayson stared at me. What are you doing? His voice was guttural. I don't understand, I said. Your hair, Grayson choked out. He lifted his free hand to my braid, his fingers nearly touching it before he pulled them into a fist. That necklace, that dress. What? I said. The only word he managed in reply was a name. Emily. It was always Emily. Somehow, I made my way to the bathroom without looking too much like I was running away. I fumbled to tear my phone out of the black satin handbag I'd been given, unsure what I was planning to do with the phone once I got it out. Someone stepped up to the mirror beside me. "You look nice," Thea said, casting a glance sidelong at me. "In fact, you look perfect." I stared at her, and comprehension dawned. "What did you do, Thea?" She glanced down at her own phone, hit a few buttons, and a moment later I had a text. I hadn't even realized she had my number. I opened the text and the picture attached, and all of the blood drained from my face. In this photo, Emily Laughlin wasn't laughing. She was smiling at the camera, a wicked little smile, like she was on the verge of a wink. Her makeup was natural, but her eyes looked unnaturally large, and her hair was exactly like mine. "What did you do?" I asked Thea again, more accusation this time than question. She'd invited herself along on my shopping trip. She was the one who suggested I wear green, just like Emily wore in this photo. Even my necklace was eerily like hers. I'd assumed, when the stylist had asked if I wanted to look like the picture, that Elisa was the one who'd supplied it. I'd assumed it was a photo of a model, not a dead girl. "Why would you do this?" I asked Thea, amending my question. "It's what Emily would have wanted." Thea pulled a tube of lipstick out of her purse. "If it's any consolation," she said when she was finished turning her lips a sparkling ruby red, "I didn't do this to you. She'd done it to them." "The Hawthorns didn't kill Emily," I spat. "Rebecca said that it was her heart." Technically, she'd said that Grayson said it was her heart. "How sure are you that the Hawthorne family isn't trying to kill you?" Thea smiled. She had been there this morning. She'd been shaken, and now she's acting like this was all a joke. "There's something fundamentally wrong with you," I said. My fury didn't seem to penetrate. I told you the day we met that the Hawthorne family was a twisted, broken mess." She stared at the mirror a moment longer. "I never said I wasn't one, too." Chapter 74. I took off the necklace and stood holding it in front of the mirror. The hair was a bigger problem. It had taken 2 people to put it up. It would take an act of God for me to get it down. "Avery?" Elisa stuck her head into the bathroom. "Help me," I told her. "With what?" "My hair." I reached back and started pulling at it, and Elisa caught my hands in hers. She transferred my wrist to her right hand and flipped a lock on the bathroom door with her left. "I shouldn't have pushed you," she said, her voice low. "This is too much too soon, isn't it?" "Do you know who I look like?" I asked her. I shoved the necklace in her face. She took it from my hands. She frowned. "Who you look like?" That seemed an honest question from a person who didn't like asking questions she didn't already know the answer to. "Emily Laughlin." I couldn't keep from cutting a glance back to the mirror. Thea dressed me up just like her. It took Elisa a moment to process that. "I didn't know." She paused, considering. "The press won't either. Emily was just an ordinary girl." There was nothing ordinary about Emily Laughlin. I didn't know when I'd come to believe that. The moment I'd seen her picture, my conversation with Rebecca, the very first time Jameson had said her name, or the first time I'd said it to Grayson. "If you stay in this bathroom much longer, people will take note," Elisa warned me. "They already have. For better or worse, you need to get out of here." I'd come tonight because in some twisted way I thought that putting on a happy face would protect Libby. I'd hardly be here if my own sister had tried to have me killed, would I? "Fine," I told Elisa through gritted teeth. "But if I do this for you, I want your word that you protect my sister in any way you can. I don't care what your deal is with Nash or what Nash is with Libby. You just don't work for me. You don't just work for me anymore. You work for her, too." I saw Elisa swallowing back whatever it was she really wanted to say. All that exited her mouth was, "You have my word." I just had to make it through dinner. A dance or two. A live auction. Easier said than done. Elisa led me to the pair of tables that the Hawthorne Foundation had purchased. At the table on the left, Nan was holding court among the white-haired set. The table on her right was half filled with Hawthorns: Zara and Constantine, Nash, Grayson, and Xander. I made a beeline for Nan's table, but Elisa sideswept and gently steered me to the seat directly next to Grayson. Elisa took the next chair over, leaving only 3 seats open, at least one of which I assumed was for Grayson. Beside me, Grayson said nothing. I lost the battle, not to flip my eyes in his direction, and found him staring straight ahead, not looking at me or anyone else on the table. "I didn't do this on purpose," I told him under my breath. trying to keep the expression on my face normal for the benefit of our audience, partygoers and photographers alike. Of course not, Grayson replied, his tone stiff, the words broke. I'd take the braid out if I could, I murmured, but I can't do it myself. His head tilted down slightly, eyes closing for just a moment. I know. I was overcome then by the mental image of Grayson helping Emily take down her hair, his fingers working the braid out bit by bit. My arm bumped against Elisa's wine glass. She tried to catch it, but I didn't move fast enough. As the wine stained the white tablecloth red, I realized what should have been obvious right from the beginning, from the moment the will had been read. I didn't belong here in this world. Not at a party like this, not sitting next to Grayson Hawthorne. And I never would.